Hey folks, and welcome to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 164 for March 11th, 2024. So I'd like to welcome everybody and to say thanks for coming out this evening. We had a pretty pleasant day here in Northeast Ohio today. Not super duper warm, but it was sunny, and that makes me happy. So anyway, thanks everybody for coming out. So before we get started, tonight's topic, and I'll talk about what the topic means in a minute here, as soon as I figure out what I'm doing. Tonight's topic is modding Wargames, and I'll get into that shortly, but I want to remind everybody before we do that to thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. There's ways to support the channel that are in the video description, all those different links, including the most recent addition to those links, the Noble Knight affiliate link. There's no new update here, but we are at 58% of the way toward our goal toward obtaining a copy of Campaign for North Africa from our friends at Noble Knight, to the sponsors of the Counterclipping show, and we'll hear from Noble Knight later on. Super chats and super stickers are on, so that's a great way to A, support the channel, and B, highlight your comment so that it doesn't get missed. We already have over 100 people here. It is very easy for me to miss, as we've seen for the last several months, for me to miss stuff. But if you throw it in a super chat or super sticker, I will get to it sooner or later, and I will answer it as best I can. I will not promise it will be an answer that you will like, but I will promise to answer anything thrown in a super chat or super sticker or address it in some other way. So thanks in advance for all that. Let me put up the banner. I would like to shout out this week to James Dosty, who was the supporter that we picked up last week on Patreon, and who I neglected to put in the ticker. He is in the ticker this time, so thank you, James. So before we get into a variety of things, we do have a little bit of news here, and we'll talk about that. Let's give a shout out to Six Actual Achilles. Adam, thank you for making it. Alistair Logie is here. Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons. Bill Simone, Brian Jarvis, Brian Gash, Carl Fung, Christopher Smith, Clark Commando 1983. Mark, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. David Zell, Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, Eric Hansen, Grunyard, Rich, the legend himself, Fucko, is in the house. Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Faust from sunny Northeast Ohio, Joe Okabayashi, Joe Perez, John Madison, John C. from the sunny Philippines, Carl Crater from the Wargame Boot Camp, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Meandering Mike, Perfidious Albion, Perry Sparopoulos, Pete Bartlett is here, Phil B., Ray Musselman, Rick Cox, Rob Johnson, Roger Hemsath, Scott Bell, Stacking Limit is in the house, Stigler, Thomas Blessing, welcome to the show, Tim Greenhaws, Tim Zales, Todd Cox, Vicky, welcome back, William Aarons, William Bird, and Wolf Dog. Let me apologize for anybody that I missed. David Thompson in the house. David, thanks for stopping by. So welcome everybody, and I apologize if I missed anybody, and I know I did because it's just the way YouTube feeds me that particular information. So just grabbing Rogue Bat Squatch IPA. I don't know what that is, but it sounds very rogue-like and IPA-like. So there's that. Perfidious Albion, Le Grand Guerre, which I recently obtained thanks to a favorable trade, let's put it that way. So it could be one of the various David Thompson clones that are responsible for any of the 75 in-progress games that David is currently working on with various collaborators. But who knows? You can never really tell. So in any case, I do have some. So I guess before we get started on anything else, and I'm going to have some commentary about the counters here. We are clipping the fate of, or I don't want to dump the box on the ground, the fate of all, brand new in the house from Thin Red Line Games. Game looks pretty impressive. I can't wait to dig into it. And in the meantime, we are clipping it. We are drinking Boulder Spirits peated malt, bottled at 46%. This is an American single malt, made and bottled in Colorado, and it's quite good. For those who are going to get super excited about, peated malt, it's not very peated. Not compared to the stuff I was drinking last week, which was Lefroy. So I would love to see the little face-off of prolific designers between David and Greg, actually. I feel like David is outpacing Greg at the moment, but that may be due to collaboration, not due to any other reason. So I was, I don't know if I was lucky or Fabrizio smiled upon me or what, but this came yesterday. The unboxing video will appear on Thursday. While I'm on that subject, before I forget to mention it, the designer-assisted unboxing video for Winter's Victory will be up on Wednesday. It took a little extra time to get that edited, even though you do it and you're like, oh, I won't need to edit this much at all. It took like 3 hours to edit that thing. So for a couple of different reasons. So very interested to see that, actually, although I haven't. I like War of the Ring a lot if we're talking about the Ares / Fantasy Flight, whatever it is, game, rather than the Richard Berg, Howie Barish classic. I think it was a co-design with Howie Barish. According to the box, I think I'm right about that. I might be mixing it up with something else. I don't know. So anyway, I do have some news, and unfortunately, it's some of it is not great news. Those who have been monitoring the situation will be aware that Dean Essig had a series of strokes not too long ago. Since it's been announced publicly now, I guess we can talk about why. It's a brain tumor. And Dean has been, according to Multiman's statement today, Dean has been moved to hospice, which is just absolutely terrible news. So obviously our thoughts and best wishes are with Dean and his family and friends. That is it's a real tragedy for hobby gaming and for the community and for all the people that knew Dean or that know Dean. Dean's still around. So I think it is, in fact, Freedom of the Galaxy that I'm getting that mixed up with. That's another one of those genre classics from SPI that I'm quite fond of. So yeah, send all of the positive vibes, whatever form those take, Dean's way. Now, another fella here tonight actually is Mark Ruggiero, who is also battling cancer. Just so everybody knows about this, the new ILAU game from Sound of Drums, which I have not yet gotten, it's still on a boat as far as I know. There will be a very special auction of a very special, unique copy of that, auctioned off on Mo's channel on Saturday at 3 p.m. Central. Did I write that down correctly? 3 p.m. Central, that's 4 p.m. Eastern. So anybody who's interested in that should definitely check that out. The game looks impressive, and from what Mo was telling me, this particular copy is even more impressive. It is a one-of-a-kind copy. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, this is just terrible news about Dean. Carl, this is part of the announcement. So Carl is going to kind of take over as series honcho or manager or whatever for those series, the BCS and Line of Battle and whatever else needs a honcho right now. But, obviously, Carl was the person I thought of when thinking who might be able to take over these responsibilities. So good call on MMP's part, but this is obviously not a scenario in which any of us wanted that to happen. So, Carl's going to do a great job. I have every confidence in Carl, but I would just as soon that something amazing happen and Dean comes back. So I don't know that we can count on that, but our best go out to Dean and his family and all the folks who are going to be touched by this situation. So I'm trying not to be cloying or sappy about it or just completely flake. But it is shipping. It's just that the U.S. copies are on a boat, and boats are slow. So that's going to happen. Obviously, this goes without saying. I think Dean is one of the most revolutionary designers in the history of commercial hobby board wargaming. I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. And the Dean's works will be with us basically forever. So, our best wishes go out to, again, for a full recovery would be fabulous. That's kind of all I want to say about it. So just so everybody knows about that situation, I noticed that both Carl and Pete are here. So I think it's not unreasonable to say that it is not going to be possible for anybody to fill those shoes, and it's just going to be up to us to kind of carry on, us as a community to carry on that legacy. A really, really important legacy. You will occasionally see me tonight break these clippers out because we are clipping the big counters for the fate of all, and they are not clipping cleanly. And I'll gripe about that. So last gamble. So I actually talked to folks about this. Word on last gamble is very late April, maybe more likely May. I don't know if that represents a change in schedule based on, shipping or what, but that is the latest word out of Compass. Original word was, in fact, this month. But here's Brad, never tired of beating this particular scarecrow. All the news that's fit to come out after Brant releases the news on Tuesday, as we say. I felt like this was possible, and I know Sound of Drums did send airmail a few copies to various important people, and apparently I was insufficiently important to get on that list, but I also did not ask, and I'm sure that is, I'm sure that would have helped. Let me put it that way. So this stuff, by the way, the Boulder Spirit stuff, everything I've had from these folks, and there's another one too. There's one in a yellow bottle. I forget what it's called. But it's all very good. I'll say, so let me be slightly less cryptic. I'm not guessing. Okay. I got this from Danny as far as, he's hoping for late April, but May is actually more likely. And I don't actually think that the date of Compass May Expo is actually a deciding factor on this at all. This was on a table at Winterfest, and everybody was pretty impressed with it. Just a bunch of Winterfest stuff that I've got to get edited and get out as well. So, and John Madison, after seeing it at Winterfest, pre-ordered it. So, I mean, Rick DeGirolami, who was playing, one of the people playing it, him and Rick Kurtz, I think, were playing it at Winterfest, and Rick DeGirolami is a great evangelist. So it's going to be nice. I will not be attending the May event. So on that, I am at this point, I'm not committed to this because that's a matter of actually spending money. But I'm going to try my best to get to San Diego HistCon on Veterans Day weekend instead. Now, there's multiple wargaming events happening that very same weekend. On the one hand, you've got Compass Expo in Meriden, Connecticut. On the other hand, you have SD HistCon. Those are the conventions that have been on those dates, basically, since they've been around, more or less anyway. And then you've got the new Desert Fox Con, which is in Dallas on that weekend. That's Decisions event. I'm sure Stigler will be there, hat in hand, to have an intimate conversation with Doc. So Stigler says, for what it's worth, he thinks Wellington's victory will be a better sim than Ilau from Sound of Drums. I have not. I'm pretty impressed with the physical quality of Winter's Victory. I think that the physical quality on Sound of Drums Ilau will also be really impressive. So I don't know. I think that might end up coming out in the wash. But I do think that, I'm not sure if I would put it this way, but this is the sense that I have. Yeah, Winter's Victory is pretty detailed. I don't expect the Sound of Drums game to be nearly as complicated. So, so I think, having never really looked, I mean, I was aware of it, but I've never really looked particularly closely at Hitler's Last Gamble from 3W from back in the day, and that's Danny's game as well. And Last Gamble is, Marty's right here. It is a heavily revised update of the old 3W Hitler's Last Gamble. But I think from talking to Danny about it that it sounds like it's maybe not a total redesign, but it's close. It's going to be a pretty thorough revision of the previous game. So Kyle Harris is about to crank the shrink on Winner's Victory. Good for you. Sound of Drums went for playability, says Mark. Yeah, that's true, and I expect great things out of both games, and I'm happy to have both games, right? So this is new. This is the first one. So FYI, and Jeff Beeler, as Jeff Beeler points out, Doc is basically retired now, and is spending more time with Decision games and does whatever arms and tentacles of Decision games are out and about. So there's that. Carlos, nice to see you here. How about that? Haven't talked to you in a while. How about that Traveler stuff? Did you see the Traveler stuff over at Gamma Expo? How about that? So I actually went in. So Carlos owns or at least part owner. Carlos, you can correct me if you want to. Of one of the Northeast Ohio game stores called Immortals Inc. It is a very good game store for cards and RPG stuff. And I'm trying to get him to do some Wargame stuff too, but he doesn't listen. He's never listened to me. I've known Carlos for like 30 years, and he hasn't listened to me yet. So I did trick him at one point into buying a bunch of Traveler product, however. So there's that. Marty, I don't know if there's a link or not. There's an advertisement in the latest issue of World at War magazine, and it is limited to 100 attendees. So I don't know what the landscape looks like. It could be friggin' sold out by now, for all I know. Brad, I was gonna send you a picture of, after you sent me a picture of the paltry amount of Traveler stuff that you saw at Gamma Expo. I was going to send you a picture of the less paltry amount of Traveler stuff that I already have, including the 3-volume slipcase set that you sent me the picture of. So, and I, of course, agree. It is in Fairview Park. Again, Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong. It is in Fairview Park, as I recall. And it's in like an office building. You might think you're going to the dentist. But no, it is in fact a game store. So Rocky River, Fairview Park, whatever. It's right down the street from Fairview Park. So yeah, more not exactly Lakewood, but I don't even know what the hell's in Lakewood anymore. I haven't been to Lakewood in ages. So I thought about putting up a GoFundMe for this, to be completely honest. He just gets the tickets in the mail. It was considered. Let's put it that way. So that is so Desert Fox. Okay, so Studio 2 is basically like a fulfillment firm that does fulfillment, meaning distribution, and I think maybe they handled some of the printing stuff too, for a large number of RPG publishers, and I think some additional odds and ends as well. Yeah, actually, this is exactly right. You may have been there, for that matter. So it is a nice store, and I do recommend people stop in if they get the chance. I have not touched any of the Skirmisher 4 stuff yet. Actually, what I'm tempted to do is throw down the map for Stonewall's Last Battle and do Burnside Takes Command. That is my notional idea, but right now I do not have the time to deal with it. So there's that. Fifth Frontier. So there's a line of Fifth Frontier War stuff coming from Mongoose. They haven't said that it is going to include or reprint or redo or whatever the old war game. I wouldn't be stunned if they did that, but if they did, I would expect it to look very, very different. Is the new MGT2 core rulebook worth the update? If you have High Guard, I would say no, because the main change is just that they put the Starship construction stuff in it as opposed to putting it in another book. That's the big change. There's some small tweaks as well, but I don't necessarily think that it's worth the upgrade if you have the previous book. Now, if you don't have the previous book, then yeah, get the new one instead, because it's got all the stuff in it. So, oh, Marty says that the Winter's Victory vassal module construction is well underway. No ETA as of yet. I will mention that the Sound of Drums vassal module is now available. I'm just saying, Marty, you could get that. You could get that going. Carlos, thank you so much. Much appreciated. So the support is always appreciated. All right. So, oh, nice. So Tony Mammal says Board Game Bliss, which I presume to be a Canadian outfit, got some Blind Swords games in their last restock. I know that Null Knight has. Last I checked, they didn't have Sedgwick Attacks yet. They had Grand Havoc, and I will need to obtain that and Sedgwick Attacks and the next thing, which is the First Day of Shiloh. So. Prophetic Albion says, comparing Red Strike to the new Third World War, the latter is by far more playable. I haven't looked at Red Strike at all, so I can't tell you that. But I can tell you that Third World War is quite playable, and in fact, so having played it twice now. So, I don't know. I'm not gonna. I am appreciative that Doc and Doug Johnson are making efforts, and other folks as well are making efforts to, address some of the lingering issues that Decision has had over the years. Let me put it that way. There you go. So I can also mention that the 3 and 4 from talking to Tony Burkett, the volumes 3 and 4 in Battles in the East are also underway. I don't know if they'll be out this year. Tony seemed to be relatively optimistic that would happen, but I also don't, he is not necessarily plugged into the printer or anything like that. So, this is my understanding. They've been talking about this for years, and I'm sure, I'll definitely get it, and we'll see what it looks like. Did I mess these up? So before we get to the topic, let me first of all, I guess, address, what the topic is. Now, I did a previous episode quite a while ago at this point about pimping out your war games. And this may have been on the show with Dan, I'm not sure, which was more or less aimed at, making physical modifications and making play aids and little fancy dinguses that will make your experience fancier. Okay. And that is not the topic tonight. The topic tonight is modding your war games because they're your war games and you can play them however you want. So that means for a lot of people coming up with house rules, and we will be addressing some of the strategies or asking questions about some of the strategies for doing that. Forge and Brush Gaming, thanks for stopping by. So, Brant, we get to the top. We always get to the topic eventually. So the reboot of Twilight's Peak is one of the Ancients books. I forget which one, because there's Secret of the Ancients, Wrath of the Ancients, and there's another one. It's a 3-volume set. One of those volumes, about 1 volume full of that material, is material that popped up in the Classic Traveler era, which includes Twilight's Peak, but also includes Adventure 13 or 12 or 11 or whatever it was, Secret of the Ancients. No, the Fifth Frontier War material will be an official Traveler Universe thing. So yeah, very, very much so. And in fact, it dates from the old, Classic Traveler era. Now, I mentioned, before we get house about house, I'm not a fan of this mechanic. I mean, there are certain games where it's really, really tightly constrained. Like there's always attacks. And I like that even less. In a game like, say, the Battle for Normandy, I don't mind it as much because you don't just have mandatory attacks. You only have mandatory attacks if you are yourself attacking, and then you don't have to do the mandatory attack for certain terrain types and things like that. So it is it feels a little less primitive in that system. as opposed to, say, something like, bluntly, Library of Napoleonic Battles, where it feels quite primitive and almost like it doesn't belong. Jeff Mueller says he likes Europa for modding because of all the counters available, and you could add new features to maps like roads and trails in Western Desert. Well, I literally bought the extra set of maps off of Ryan Heilman so that I could make modifications to those maps. And between what I got from Ryan and what I got elsewhere, I have a full duplicate set of Europa maps, except for Scorched Earth. They're the only maps I don't have 2 copies of now. And in fact, I think I have 3 copies of a decent number of them. So, all right. Stigler, are those aware? Are those available anywhere? Because we are probably going to spin up Air Force / Dauntless in the not terribly distant future. And Joe Perez says if he's playing solitaire, he can re-roll the dice if he doesn't like the roll. I don't like to do that. I don't think there's a moral question there. If you're only playing yourself, you are in fact only shooting yourself. But if you feel like you're going to get a more interesting result out of a different roll and you want to fiat that, I don't have an objection to that. So before we get into that, however, I'm gonna spend at least 3 minutes complaining about the counters here in The Fate of All. Now, the feel of them with this sort of satin finish coating that they have on them, they feel really nice, and the art is fine, whether it's AI art or not. I'm not sure where they use the AI art, but I imagine it's on the counters. I'll talk about that a little bit in the unboxing video. But the gutters on these counters are really small, and if I see an example, I will show you, although I don't know how well it is going to come out. But the registration is not perfect. And as a result, while no text is actually being cut off, we are getting text right up to the edge of the counters in some cases, and I'm not a big fan of that. It's not bad enough that I'm going to go call Fabrizio up and yell at him, but it's slightly disappointing that is the case. Now, I mean, I guess I felt like either my 1985 games are perfect and they didn't have this problem, or that I didn't notice it, which is plausible, or that they just have bigger gutters on them. That is, in fact, why you had the gutters. John, I suspect, I don't know this, it might say somewhere in the game, I suspect it is actually printed in Europe rather than in the US or China, but I could be wrong about that. So Fabrizio has been known to occasionally stop by, and if somebody knows, feel free. So that is my understanding at this time. Eric Goebel created HQ counters for empires and alliances to add in assaults purchasable through infantry and artillery replacements. That sounds okay. I could see it. I could see, depending on how the dynamic of that Western Front works, I could see this working. I have not played Empires and Alliances, and bluntly, it's been a long time since I've played the predecessor game, Guns of August from Avalon Hill. So there's that. So I want to kind of explore kind of the house rule landscape. You know, what kinds of things do we really want to house rule? Either into a game or out of a game. John from Half-Ass Gaming has already mentioned mandatory attacks, but I do feel like at least some of the games in which I've seen mandatory attacks, that's built so tightly into the game that I think you'd probably mess the game up if you just said attacks are no longer mandatory and made no other modifications. John, I absolutely sympathize with this too. So these do not have center dibs, thank God. They are very, very firmly attached to the sheets, and I have, in fact, been using a utility knife to remove them from the sheets, which I don't normally do. What that probably means is that tonight I will be finished clipping counters earlier than usual, because I will have gone through all the counters that I've already cut out of the sheets, and I don't want to talk on stream while cutting counters and all hunched over the table like this, because that's basically what that looks like. Krusty Captain plays the Avalanche Press War at Sea games with the Avalon Hill Jutland combat rules and damage sheets. Okay, I have never played any of these. I think that certainly one can draw a lineage between, say, Jutland and kind of through Flat Top, and thereby into those. Oh, this is disappointing. Who's the publisher of the? Remind me who the publisher of this is again. That's unfortunate. Mark, thanks for stopping by. I am not a fan of the center nibs. Okay, now that doesn't mean that I don't occasionally pick up games with center nibs, because if you want an older game, sometimes it's just got center nibs. Avalon Hill did center nibs for freaking decades, felt like. So TSR also center nibs in basically everything from them that I ever saw, at least the Spitzer games, at least. Sure, but I guess I got a copy of War of Wizards here. I could go bust that out and see if it's got center nibs. And probably that is due for some kind of repair job at some point in the future anyway. So under, what are some other rules that you'd be tempted to get rid of? Sometimes there are, sort of de facto official / unofficial house rules, like the compressed air combat tables for Europa, for example. And I feel like Europa is one of those things that is pretty susceptible to home modification. I will also, I guess, throw out the caveat that Marty says that Stalingrad Roads was published by Nuts, which is in France, as I recall. But okay, these are two separate games, apparently. When you hear the title, Roads to Stalingrad, I was like, ooh, is this a new Vance von Boris game? No, it's not. That's disappointing, because I always wanted to see that. I have not watched. I queued that video up, but I haven't watched it yet. So, yep, it was borrowed with maybe some changes, but I don't know about that. So, I don't hate black licorice. That's not something I would have said if you asked me the question when I was a teenager, but it's something that I will occasionally have nowadays. Reasonably sure it's toxic, so you shouldn't eat too much. I'm hearing good things about you are not the first person I've seen comment about how nice the box is for Sedgwick Attacks. I always buy and I intend to continue to buy the Blind Swords games, at least the ones from Revolution, in the Ziplocs, because I can store them myself, and we can, and sooner rather than later, you're going to see me bust out another couple of Blind Swords games to get them punched and clipped as well. So now Sambuca, I just don't like. I think that stuff's gross, but it is a licorice liqueur. So it's always been my position, though, that if you are going to modify a game system, that you should, before doing that, you should really understand it pretty well. Which leads me to say, outside of a couple of fairly narrow situations, leads me to say that I don't house rule much, because I play different stuff a fair amount of the time. With some exceptions, like say OCS or something like that maybe I do play a fair amount of. I end up not feeling sufficiently comfortable with my rules knowledge to feel like doing house rules is safe. Let me put it that way. Sedgwick Attack, no, although this did happen. No, Sedgwick Attacks is Salem Church, which is we talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, which is part of Chancellorsville. Graffiti Salvian says they used to play Quinto's Wings. I've never played that. Those are the boats. These are these things. And then beyond everything else, we're just doing infantry and cavalry, I think. There's not that much infantry here. The other thing I'm going to complain about is the color choices on these counters are really all very close. I got an extra light here above the work table that I had to turn on so that I could tell the counter colors apart. Not exactly the end of the world, and I'm not sure. So it does affect recruitment or acquiring new units, if you will. So I don't know if it's going to end up being important or not. So, all right. All right. So Joe Price didn't know anything about blind swords until very recently. And since he just finished the rules to GBACW, well, blind swords is a lot easier to deal with than GBACW, I'll tell you that. Jeff Beeler mentions that Avalanche Press has at least 3 different tactical rule systems for its Great War at Sea series. No need for house rules. I suppose not. I've only got the one thing, the one Coral Sea game. But remember that they have the Second World War at Sea, Great War at Sea, and then there's that whole alternate history line that they have, which I have zero interest in personally. But some people are into that, right? Presumably, Ty Bomba's playing the shit out of that. I mean, this makes total sense, right? That the battle resolution system would be a bit different in Second World War versus Great War, right? Nah, it's not that bad. I mean, it's high end of complexity. I'm not going to tell you GBACW is not high end of complexity. Everybody, including right up to Stigler himself, will agree to that. But it's not, it's not that complicated. And the rule book is now better than it used to be. It helps quite a bit, actually. So for a series with the number of years in it that GBACW had when the third version of 3 Days of Gettysburg came out, I don't feel like there's a really good excuse for that rule book to be as poorly organized as it was. I do feel like some of the explanations were not great. Just use of language. I thought it would support technical writing, and it wasn't organized as well as I would like it to be. This is a lot of people, obviously not the GCACW people. We all love that mechanism whereby somebody, as frustrating as it is when it's not you, can get 15 initiatives in a row. But I feel like the existing mechanism actually works basically fine in the long run. But that said, it can be and we certainly saw this. It can be frustrating when you're playing it and you cannot get the initiative rolling. You can't do it. You can't do shit until the other side is like done. They've moved all their stuff. You can go in and clean up afterwards. That is fairly frustrating. That said, I don't know that I'm upset enough by it to make any changes to it. Let me put it that way. Brent, are you interested in anything but World War II and modern? I'm just curious. Or hypothetical, as the case may be. Professor Albion loves tactical games with random variable force and map mix, such as GDW's Assault. I have heard nothing about that coming back from Compass. I wonder if that is something that is going to happen, because that was a series that was, I recall, it's platoon or company level mod, Cold War goes hot. And it was it was a popular enough series that GDW did like 5 different products for it. So presumably people liked it, and I know people that still like it today. And I feel like it wouldn't be a terrible idea to redo it if somebody has, say, a contract with Frank Chadwick to redo all their stuff. No, it was made that what that box is, there is no box for BAOR. That was made by the person who gave me the game, or traded me the game, however that worked out. And it is just made out of a Hofgap box. So I'm going to disagree with Stigler here, but probably for a different reason than he's thinking, in that for larger battles, assuming you're running the entire battle out of the same chit cup, which you might not do, but if you are, then I think you might end up sitting around for a while if your chits just aren't coming up. So Frank says he prefers to ignore most rules and have fewer rules that need to be modded. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this as an instinct, right? Optimally, we should, and I bear in mind that I'm saying this particular statement as somebody who tends to lean into complicated games and who tends to play more complicated games. Complexity is not a worthwhile design goal, nor is it desirable on its own. If the complexity is giving you something, then okay, maybe there's a reason to have it. But if you don't have that reason, or if it is not providing you with additional simulation value, then in my opinion, you are better off with the simpler mechanics. Simpler mechanics are, all of the things being equal, better because more people can play the game. That is not... I think that's not controversial, but there are also examples where you are gaining some level of simulation value or detail or what have you from additional complexity, and some people will want those things. And I've been, the guy that says there's room for complicated game. Let me put the banner up, actually. The banner was up. What am I doing? All right, so let's see here. Oh, nice. Bill Thomas, according to Stacking Lit, Bill Thomas says Assault is coming in a few years. They got plenty to do now, so I think that is a completely sensible answer. Neil Badke says such a big following for Assault, continuing TONEs and scenarios units for tons of other theaters. Yeah, there's tons of room there. I mean, there was a lot of fan material for Third World War as well, so I'm glad that some of that stuff is actually going to, go through a production process, and we're actually going to see it. The only add-ons right now I have for Third World War are the stuff that showed up in Paper Wars. So, I mean, this is true, but in a big battle, your sector that you are running just may not be getting chits. If it is other people's chits getting drawn in your sector, then yeah, you need to pay attention because you might have some opportunity fire or what have you. But I could see doing some sitting around. And, I'm not objecting to that necessarily either. I found that when we did GCACW at Winterfest, there's like negligible downtime, right? Because any given activation might take literally seconds. Sometimes they might take 5 minutes if there's something particularly complicated going on, or there's a lot of hemming and hawing, which you see sometimes. But there's very little downtime. And, I actually missed a certain amount of that downtime. On the other hand, okay, Fabrizio, I won't go so far as to call these defective. That's why I wasn't going to call you and yell at you. So Thin Red Line games printed in Europe. That's what I figured. That was, but I was making that as an assumption rather than I have actual information saying that it's printed in Europe. So the gutters are a little small. Let me put it that way. Bill Thomas does not talk about Imperium or Fifth Frontier War, so they may be going elsewhere. So, and also Fabrizio, thanks for coming out tonight and at whatever unholy hour it is in Italy right now, or Central European time. So, Yeah, no, this is true. This is all true. But at the same time, you might still be sitting around. So, and this is true too. I wasn't going to mention this because this has been an ongoing thing, but Mark Ruggiero is selling a lot of his games through the Facebook Marketplace through the Consim Marketplace on Facebook. Also, in non-coincidence, the only reason to be on Facebook, in my opinion. So, well, of course it is. This is absolutely true. It's not wargaming without whining, right? So I don't know. I mean, I would love to see. So I guess I'll mention that Compass does have some kind of deal. I don't know if it's a contract or a handshake deal or what, because they don't tell me that level of detail. But they do have an arrangement with Frank Chadwick to basically redo a lot of Frank's games through Compass. But Belter, as I recall, is a Mark Miller game. Am I right about that? I'm going to actually look that up. I thought I was right about that, but I may be just filling the blank in. Well, I'm not going and getting it off the shelf. It's a designer, according to BGG, is Frank Miller and Frank Chadwick and Mark Miller. So I don't know. And they said they're doing Belter. So I'd love to see them redo Imperium. I'd love to see anybody redo Imperium. There is actually a Chinese version of Imperium. I don't know if it's Great China or Taiwan China or Hong Kong or what, but I've seen pictures of it on BGG, and man, it's nice. So there's that. I got people. There's people asking on my on the Discord periodically about is there going to be a reprint on this? So Frank asks for an example of a complex rule that adds something worth the extra time cost. Now, whether it's worth the extra time cost is a value judgment. But for example, I am going to say that the relatively intricate method that movement is handled by in Goss adds a considerable amount to the play experience. Because it takes care of things like road congestion and things like that. So I suppose one could consider that a simulation element, right? So all right, Brian Salahor, thanks for stopping by. We are talking about rules modifications rather than, or additions, that's fine too. And I suppose, based on how I've defined this, things like even new scenarios kind of counts, although I don't know that we're going to talk a great deal about that tonight. I mean, I think Frank's instinct there is good, right? I mean, I think if you're going to have a complicated game, I think you need to think carefully. You, the designer, need to think carefully about, what the complexity is there for. I think that's a completely reasonable statement to make. That said, I have a somewhat higher tolerance for complicated games than Frank does. So, and that's fine too. This is unusefully reductive, though. I mean, you can make this case, but then if you're going to make this case, then I guess everything devolves into Candyland or Chutes and Ladders or something like that. So, I think this is Doug. Thanks for stopping by. The Tabletop's Edge. I think this is actually a terrible example. Because I feel like the combat in OCS is like one of the most straightforward things in the game. There's certainly some fiddly bits and in various places in those rules, but those things tend not to be inside the combat. Then again, I've played a fair amount of OCS, and maybe it's just me being excessively used to it. So there's that. But I do feel like that surprise rule specifically adds a tremendous amount, or I guess the surprise aspect of the combat model. I do feel like that adds a really nice element of uncertainty to the combat resolution. Let me put it that way. it was 100% the kind of thing that I looked at when I first saw it, among other things about OCS back in the day, and thought, man, there's no way this is going to work. This sounds goofy. And I was wrong. It totally works. The other thing that was, struck me as like basically impossible mechanically to deal with at the time was the supply, right? Now, here's the caveat though. Back in the day, I had the first 2 OCS games, Guderian's Blitzkrieg and Enemy at the Gates. And this changes in Enemy at the Gates, but it's still there in Guderian's Blitzkrieg, and I think I didn't notice that it had changed. In Guderian's Blitzkrieg 1, there's a huge rules change between Guderian's Blitzkrieg and Enemy at the Gates, which is volume 2, okay? And the huge rule change is trace supply. I don't know if it's worded quite this way, but there's basically no trace supply in GB1. Everything eats off the map. And I don't know that that's complicated, but it's certainly a lot of chit management. Let's put it that way. As a reminder, since Mo just popped in, Mo, thanks for stopping by. I already mentioned this, but I will mention again that there is an auction on Mo's channel at 3 p.m. Central Time, meaning 4 p.m. at a civilized time, on Saturday of a one-of-a-kind copy of the new Sound of Drums ILAO game to benefit Mr. Mark Ruggiero. So please do check that out if you are able to do that. And I don't know how Mo's going to handle it. If he wants to put that in the chat, be my guest. So, all right, so Perfidious Albert says, in Assault, the TAC Ops Center could take several turns to save command points, then distribute these as bonus points to lower company HQs. Hence, NATO can outcommand comparable Soviet formations. It's been 35 years or something like that since I've played that, so I cannot comment in any sense about how Assault works at this point. I am on absolutely shaky ground. Eric Goebel says a house rule they have and make mandatory is everyone makes mistakes. We're not going to lose our shit when somebody makes a mistake. So here's the thing. I forget what the actual rule citation is. But if you open up the ASL rulebook to like the first page containing actual rules, there's a rule that's something like A2. And this is how it gets quoted amongst ASL folks. And what that rule says is that if you have made a mistake and you have moved past the point at which the mistake was made, it's done. Move on. You're not going to try and fix it. Just move on. And I am very sympathetic to that rule. Everybody does make mistakes, rules mistakes in these things. These are pretty complicated games after all, and it is completely normal and reasonable for errors to occur. So that said, I want to minimize those mistakes. I want to understand but to me, it's not so much about, adhering to the rule book that was chiseled into stone tablets. It's just about wanting to understand the game as well as I can, given where I am at the moment, right? Better, as a defender of complicated games, I am not going to say better. I am going to say that some people prefer the extra texture that complexity can provide when it's used well. But there's also certain, everybody's going to have a bridge too far at this too. And I've talked about at least 2 of my personal bridges too far. One of which is the combat efficiency value in the Second World War series from Diffraction. I think it's too much. I think it is not adding anything that you couldn't add through arithmetically simpler mechanisms. And I think it is ill considered. So yeah, you're gonna have to check this out because it's a one of a kind copy out of UVA and Sound of Drums games. So yeah, I think this is ridiculous, and I probably would just choose not to play with somebody that was going to try and be this anal about it. But Doug is also right that is a needed rule because of tournament play, and there is a reasonable amount of orientation toward tournament play in the ASL world. So now, if it's trivial, I'm sympathetic to this too. If it's trivial to fix, you just move a counter. Okay, just move a counter. But I also don't want to, and I catch myself doing this too. Oh, can I take this back? I actually meant to do it this way. Blah 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 blah. I don't really like to do that. I'm like, hey man, I moved the piece. I decided it was going to be okay. So I am going to just roll with what I did, even if I just thought it's something better. So, Brent, thanks for stopping by. There you go. The classic scene. I have not seen History of the World Part 2, by the way. I should probably check that out. So these games originally came out from Victory Point Games, as I recall, and they're pretty well regarded. And they were going to be redone by Decision, and I am a little unclear as to exactly what happened with that. What the fuck am I even clipping here? I am a little unclear as to exactly what happened with that stuff, because I've seen basically no news on that in several years. So, oh no, this is. I mean, I've totally seen this, but I'm not. No. If you're that competitive about it, we are simply not compatible players, and we should not be playing the same games. And Vassal does have an undo button. That's true. So, I think the whole rules lawyer thing is somewhat misunderstood. I am fully supportive of getting the rules right. Okay. On the other hand, I have certainly been there when somebody has decided for no particularly good reason that a rules argument is going to happen right now. And that can certainly be very annoying. Now, if there's like genuine confusion about it, I have no problem with that. Let's figure it out. And if we have to, let's just make a decision. They did a very nice job with this, though. I mean, I've pawed through a copy of Fading Glory, as I recall it's called. I don't think they sat on it for quite that long. Alan Salazar, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, and in some cases, they're just arguing to argue, right? They're not even, like, adopting a particular position. And I don't mind people making observations about, rules coherency or something like that. So we're not talking about that, John. We're not talking about that at all. There's a reason why I don't play with that guy. It's just, that's not even a value statement. That's just, I'm not going to be a compatible player with some other individuals. That's fine. Some people are going to be super annoyed by me. Sometimes I'm really annoyed by me. And I can definitely verify that my wife is occasionally super annoyed by me. So there's that. So there's an additional factor in play in games like Starfleet Battles or ASL, where it's a real complicated system that also has this really well-developed ecosystem of players. So there are people out there, lots of people, in fact, that know those games really, really well. And if they're going to have a rules argument with you, are they doing so for their own benefit in the game? If they are, then again, that's probably somebody whose outlook on gameplay is fundamentally more competitive than I'd like to deal with personally. So John, I told you about this. Stigler knew when I asked him, he knew exactly what I was talking about. Henri, thanks for stopping by. Henry, you're not the fellow that's doing stuff on, TikTok for wargaming, are you? Are you the same that same Henry? Because if so, I've been watching your stuff. It's good stuff. Not a lot of action taking place in the tabletop board wargaming space on TikTok. Let's put it that way. Which is why I'm usually doing. If I do TikTok, it's about something else. Usually, there's a link. There's a link to that in the video description. So if you want to check out Henry's table, Henry spelled this way on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, he's doing good good solid board wargaming content. So highly recommended. So glad you could make it. I'm actually completely fine with this. I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation about, no, I think this is the way it's supposed to work. But if you can't agree, then, you also want to keep the game moving, right? Whoa. We just dropped a piece. We'll be fine. Yeah, you told me this too, Stigler, and that's great. I am glad that a contribution was made and not just an unpleasant game day experience. Let's put it that way. There are also, here's a great example. The Eagle and the Sun, okay? Let's say, game from the legendary company Fresno Games Association, okay? For those who don't know, and I suspect everybody here might, FGA was a company that did zero playtesting as far as anybody could tell. Their stuff launched very undeveloped. Their rules were absolute crap. One of the things that they did, and they did a fair amount of stuff, I'd have to check and see how many things they released, but it's 20 plus games that they did. One of the things they did was the Eagle and the Sun, which is basically their take on War in the Pacific. And it was universally agreed that was not a playable game based on the components you got when you got it from FGA. So there were some fans who basically rebuilt a whole game system around what they thought that game was trying to do. And that's floating around somewhere on the internet. So there, we can say, hey, here's a house rule that we really like. Or here even, a slightly lesser degree would be, here's an optional rule that's in the book that we would prefer to play with, versus I have basically redesigned this entire game from scratch because the original production was a disaster. I have seen that happen. I have occasionally been willing, in principle, to even do that, right? All right. Good. Marty says good playtesters can be annoying to play with. It's probably true, but that's, for the same personality traits that might make them good playtesters. Mo says he finds that Wargames played opposed. Both players are working together to make sure they both play the game right. Yeah. And this is exactly how I feel about it. Like I said, I'd rather get it right. I'd rather experience the designer's intention, and then, down the road, if I feel like, hey, I learned this new fact about the historical situation, or I really think this mechanism might work, this tweak might make the game better, then I have no problem making house rules. However, I'd like to understand what the game is doing out of the book before I am willing to make house rules. And this is true too. See also Decision Games. There's been a number of, I felt like this about Goss, right? I felt like there's really a lot to offer here. And I was right about that. But you do have to, A, be willing to deal with quite high complexity, and B, be willing to put up with what was at the time a really terrible rulebook. Fortunately, the rulebook is a lot better now. So, yeah, true. Mo says that's where to put the rules lawyers, is put them in playtesting. That's absolutely right. Now, this is a guy. Now, okay, this is a person who I would never play with again. This is a person I would never. Is this somebody I know, John? Because I would never play with this person again. Because this is a person. A game of Second Front is a non-trivial effort, okay? And if you're like several days into that, and this guy got frustrated and decided he was going to sink the entire Allied fleet out in the mid-Atlantic, fuck that guy. I'm not playing with that dude again. He's going to torpedo everybody else's experience because they got frustrated. That is a huge no-no as far as I'm concerned. So. All right. Yeah. And, you know, as somebody that's played Second Front beginning to end, no thanks, man. No thanks. Mike Reed says, we'll be interested to see how you go about clipping the fate of all. Well, I mean, you can, I could have dragged these out of the sheets without cutting them out, but I didn't. I do feel like whatever method Fabrizio and company are using to get these counters produced has some kind of coating on them that I think does not lend itself well to just punching them out of the sheet with your thumbs. So I elected, rather than trying to deal with that and potentially ripping a counter in half, to just cut them out. So, and we're pretty close to being at the end of the counters that I have already cut out, because we're not going any further. I got one more of these trays of counters. So Stigler, this is uncharacteristically positive of you. So they do have no side nibs. Yeah. Well, you know, if you're sure you're right, you know, I don't really particularly object to somebody being pushy about it. But if somebody's going to wreck the game to prove that they are in fact the rules guru, no, fuck that guy. I'm not doing that. I'm just not dealing with that. There you go. There you go. I'd never play with that guy again after invading England, because there's no more Allied fleet anymore. That is absolutely fair. So, Profiti Salvi has been checking out alternatives to the Oregon Deluxe clippers and found the same clippers direct from China through Alibaba. Yes, you may have to... Could you send me a link to that? You won't be able to put it in the chat. Can you send me a link to that? Because you can absolutely get the same clippers from a Chinese manufacturer. I would actually order some for spare parts, if nothing else. So, well, that is where they are made, Stigler. That is where they are made. Same with these ones. These ones are just metal, so you don't have to really worry about them breaking. Let's put it that way. All right. Now, Alan Salazar says, and I am very sympathetic to this point of view, too, says it's the exploration of history that's important, not winning or being a rule. I had to make peace a long time ago with the fact that I'm just not that great a player. So we are just going to have to be satisfied with losing games here and there, right? That's just the way it is. So... I think we talked about this, Mo. I don't feel like the 3mm clipper. I do have a 3mm clipper. It's the second biggest size that they make. I think there is a 5mm floating around as well. And I feel like on any but the largest counters, and by the largest counters, I mean like 1 inch or larger counters, are the minimum size for that clip to look right. If you clip even 5/8 inch counters, which is the largest common size for traditional war games, I feel like that 3mm is really a really big clip. So yes, I will agree with this. You normally know right away, and it's not mysterious. The only things I use that clipper for are the 1 inch counters out of a few games. Gathering Storm has 1 inch counters or thereabouts, and PQ-17 has 1 inch counters again or thereabouts. And I've used the 3mm for those games, but that 3mm has gotten very little use. And in fact, when the spring broke on this, might have been the 2mm clipper, but when the spring broke on one of the two clippers I use all the time, I got an extra spring. I called up Oregon Laminations, and they managed to work some magic and get me an extra spring. But in the meantime, I'm like, man, I can't live without my clipper, man. This is not okay. So I stripped the spring off the 3mm clipper, and I got the replacement spring, and it's still sitting on the workbench. I have yet to actually reassemble the 3mm clipper, and that happened months ago. So... All right. So Joe Perez ordered the 2-inch and 3-inch. I think we're talking about 2mm and 3mm clipper. Like this is why I tell people the 2.5 is the best like middle ground if you're just going to buy one. But I do mostly. I like a fairly tight clip, and I do mostly 1/2-inch counters. So I felt the first one I bought, and the one I wouldn't do without is the 2mm clipper. So. The problem with nail clippers is you can't get a completely consistent clip. That has always been the problem. So I have, so these, do I have an example sitting here? I don't think I do. So yes, there is a, hold on, I'll go get it. All right, so the device Mike is talking about is either or is very similar to this thing. You can get this at any craft store, Michael's, Pecatans, whatever. Pecatans doesn't exist anymore. Joanne Fabrics will have them. And this has a 4, a 7, and a 10mm clipper. It is relatively flimsy, certainly compared to this thing. You cannot clip counters with this, but the radii are so big that you wouldn't want to clip counters with that anyway. So I have taken to rounding the corners on my play aids, in part because I felt like it was a cute affectation that's like, since it's part of the brand that we're rounding every fucking thing around here, we'll just round all the player aids too. And also so that it's easier to tell when we're putting it all back together at the end of the convention, it's easier to tell my individual bits and bobs from everybody else's bits and bobs. Because mine are the ones that some psychopath rounded the corners on. So that is mine. I also, I have a laminator. Can't find it. Don't know where it went. No idea where it went. So I ordered a new one. The difference is that the new one will take a 11x17. I don't have 11x17 lamination packet pouches, but you can get them on Amazon. So I got a big laminator too, and all the stuff that I made for the game at Winterfest, I laminated. So I will actually not laminate the round the corners on something that I'm laminating, because the lamination packets, at least the ones I get, have rounded corners. So I feel like I'm covered. So, and that's kind of a modding question too, right? The physical modding, we've just already talked about that, and I don't know that I don't know that I have anything new to say about it. Let me put it that way. I will just make as a general statement, boy, I'd love to have the 3D printer back at this point. I can think of all kinds of stuff that I'd really like to be making. I just have to find the time to do it. I just haven't had the time. So while I try and catch up to the chat again, let us hear very briefly from our friends at Noble Knight, the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show. Take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world. Just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
Thank you, Noble Knight. Again, the official Counter Clipping Show sponsor. And there's a link in the video description that is the affiliate link. So if you buy some stuff from Noble Knight, you were going to buy it anyway, let's face it. I will get a little kickback in the form of some store credit, and that will eventually pile up to the point where I can get a copy of Campaign for North Africa. And here's where we are as of right now. And I probably won't have an update for you on this for at least another week and maybe 2 weeks from the campaign for North Africa. So, but this is going very well. Let me put it that way. So thanks to all the folks who have bought stuff through the link. Somebody asked about, John Madison asked the Matt coat. So Mark Veerman has done this, and I throw Mark's name out now because John knows who I'm talking about. And Mark, and I was like really pleased after like fiddling with him after some counters. Mark did it with Third Winter. I was like feeling him, and I'm like, this feels really nice. It's like a matte spray finish. It came out really good. And then Mark used a rotary cutter to cut all the counters out and absolutely fucking butchered hundreds of counters. So I'm like, what's the point if I'm just going to cut halfway through the counter with my rotary cutter? But this feels nice, and I would have to ask Mark exactly what matte spray he used. It wasn't Testers, I can tell you that. It was something you get from the hardware store. So it is the clipping. Marty, it is I believe a thermistor issue. What it's basically doing is it's stopping in mid-print because it thinks the temperature is off. And I don't know if the temperature is actually off. The thermistor is the heat sensor that tells it what the temperature is. I think I have replacements, but replacing it is less trivial than I'd like it to be. It means I have to disassemble the power supply and add new wires to the power supply and all that stuff. And I just haven't had the energy or time to deal with it. Very easy to do this. Well, let me put it this way. My Noble Knight wish list is enormous. Let's put it that way. Am I bleeding? A little bit. Not sure what happened there. So, Perfidious Albion spray painted at Legrand Gare counters. I think a couple of mine are loose. I would consider doing this. I don't think this is necessary, but I would consider doing this. I felt like they felt really good. I would be more inclined to do it with counters that started out glossy, as opposed to counters like these that have more of a matte finish, which I like. So yeah, I didn't have the cash, man. That's the problem is that was at a pretty attractive price, as I recall. And in principle, I'm okay with that. Didn't have $650 or whatever it cost. So, deal counters on play aids. That's probably closer to 4 millimeters, if nothing else. I'd have to bust out an actual deck of cards to measure that, and there's little gauges you can 3D print that will tell you what radii on various rounded corners are. All right. Yeah, I've screwed this up too, where I declared too high a price, sending something to Canada, and then it gets stuck in customs. Not really super desirable. You can call them and try and send them a corrected customs form, but that's a pain. That's just as much a pain in the ass as handing them a pile of money. So. Yeah, just get some matte spray. Just make sure you get the kind that's going to dry and that's not going to be tacky when it dries. Let me put it that way. Folks, there are, according to StreamYard, 198 people watching tonight, 50 plus of which are on Twitter. So if anybody's watching from Twitter, thanks for watching on Twitter. I appreciate it. That was not a thing that I had noticed in the past. And I'm like, wait, YouTube's not giving me this number. And I'm like, holy cow. So, Mike Reed says he finds that making a sale transaction and then earmark the purchase is handy, makes the money go further, and keeps your shelves happy. Maybe it's been a long day and I'm having a little trouble parsing what Mike is trying to say here. Making a sale transaction and then earmark. So I do that with all my stuff, actually, because I have to keep track of this stuff at this point. So I keep receipts and all that stuff because I need to know what I'm spending. Let's put it that way. No, I mean, I have seen unpunched copies of Case Blue go in minutes on the Consim Marketplace on Facebook. Within minutes, sold for $800 to $900. Right now, Noble Knight has, I think, 2 copies of Case Blue. Now, I don't know what the condition is, but I think they're both unpunched for like $650, which was really a very reasonable price for unpunched case blue, unless the box is like somebody actually took a dump in the box, which I doubt. So, yes, and Noble Knight, if they do trade-ins, and they are, you're not going to get as much trading your stuff to Noble Knight as you would if selling it individually on eBay. But selling it individually on eBay is a pain in the ass. The reason why I didn't do another sale video is because it's a pain in the ass. I sold. There's some unseen noises coming from upstairs. Might have to check that out. So Mike is saying that a email to the Noble Knight for the buy trade in a single transaction. Oh, okay. This makes complete sense to me. And they are super easy to work with. So stickers and blocks for CNC Napoleonics. Oh. So I found that the sticker size on the Commands and Colors blocks from GMT is very close to the size of the blocks, and you're not getting a lot of extra gutter on those blocks. So consequently, I found it's relatively easy to put them on a little bit crooked and have like parts of the sticker hanging off the edge. If you are good enough at it to not have that happen, then I would consider actually spraying those. That's not a terrible idea. If nothing else, it will seal the sticker onto the block, right? Haven't tried to sticker the new Napoleon. It's not new anymore, but the latest version of Napoleon from Columbia Games. That's got like big, oversized, chunky blocks and big, beautiful stickers. So, Perfidious Albion. I have seen people do this. I've seen pictures of this. I have never... I'm not positive. I've never seen it in person, either at an Origins or like at an ASL Oktoberfest or something like that, because I've seen people do this with ASL, because who doesn't have a few dozen extra ASL boards sitting around? I've never personally done this. You will need a lot of foam core. And if I did that, if I did this, I would be... So on the one hand, you would want to do it in a game that has elevation, right? So a game like, say, I don't suppose tons of people have extra copies of Last Chance for Victory laying around. Yeah. So this was, Eric, do you have the Avalon Hill version? Because I think those were screen printed blocks, as opposed to the stickers, which is all the recent ones have been stickers, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I've seen people do that for ASL maps, and it's visually neat, but I have not personally. I'd be hard pressed to like think of a game that I would get what I felt to be the payback out of that, because I'd play it enough, right? Oh, he's got the Gamma 2 version. Okay, yeah, that's early 70s, man. But Gamma 2 was screen printing or embossing or whatever the proper terminology for that is. No, I don't think it's missing the point. I think people are choosing to, it's a hobby, right? People are choosing to engage with their hobby and the way that they're choosing to engage with their hobby. And if that happens to be little handicrafts, then I personally don't want to do that, but I can actually see the appeal in doing that, right? And as Marty points out, yes, they're going to be a giant pain to transport, and they also won't wear well. So, I don't think so. Jeff Beeler. To me, the games, I have often said that I feel like Commands and Colors to me feels a little more like a miniatures game. This is true too. Do the legwork on the spray adhesive, on the matte spray finish. Make sure you get stuff that doesn't turn yellow, and you get stuff that doesn't stay sticky. Because if it stays sticky, you're going to have a bad day when it comes to taking those out of the counter trays. So this makes complete sense to me, though, because you can custom design your own storage solution. And the only reason I haven't tried to do that is because A, that is a giant project that I don't really have the bandwidth to deal with, right? By that, I mean, sorting and clipping and all that ASL. But you could come up with your own custom storage solution that you love. Now, it could be that the tester spray is great. I don't know, but it's also fairly expensive and comes in a tiny ass can. So I would be advised to. Are we done? We are done with the clipping for tonight. I would advise doing the research on this. So. Eric Hansen says, find a spray designed for finishing artwork, and that's probably fairly good advice as well, although I personally have no idea how you would do that. Just no clue. But I'm not an art guy, right? I never took an art class. There's caveats to this. I never took an art class after grade school because... Well, in my high school, you did have a requirement that you were going to take an art class. I took mechanical drawing, which counted, but it shouldn't have. It was not an artistic thing. So let me, here's a strip of counters. Let's see if we can see that. You see how close that text is to the edge of the counter on the one side there? And we're not really getting a gray. Naturally, when you want autofocus to not work, it works perfectly. John, I'm going to take John's word for this because I am not a fine artist. I did take a photography class in high school as well, though, in addition to the drafting classes. And I felt like that was a neat, enriching experience. Don't remember. I saw the camera. You needed to have like a 35 millimeter film camera. And back in the day, it was film. It was not, these were not digital cameras. Digital cameras may not have even been available at that time outside of, academic institutions or something like that. So these are clipping pretty well. I am very pleased with, operational ancients. That's exciting to me. So I'm happy with that. I didn't, this is a thing that I didn't notice when I was doing the unboxing video. And on the other hand, look at these, right? These are nowhere near on the sides. They're nowhere near the edge, but on the bottom, again, they're super duper close. So registration is not perfect, but again, it's not bad enough. No information is actually missing. So while it's aesthetically undesirable, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it either. So I will, however, drink some scotch. It seems obvious that charcoal you'd use some kind of coating. Now, John says that the actual artist, which John is, put a liquid sealant over acrylics or oils and not sprays. Okay. I'm going to take John's word for that. Oh God. I had a borrowed digital camera at one point that I was using years and years, like decades ago now, to sell stuff on eBay. But no, everybody's got, this is why I forget who this was. Somebody in Wargaming was on Facebook. Not in a wargaming space. This was just them ranting on their page on Facebook. It's about how come I can't find a reasonably priced MP3 player now. All the MP3 players are like cheap trash that you get from Wish, or they're super duper expensive. And the answer is like really obvious, because everybody's got an MP3 player that they're carrying around with them at all times. It's their phone. The same thing with the camera. If you're a professional photographer, yeah, a phone camera is probably not going to be adequate. But other than that, you're probably perfectly fine working with your camera. I have Okay, so I've had this YouTube channel since 2007. As I recall, it might be 2009, something like that. And I have never filmed anything that wasn't on a webcam in some cases, pretty shitty webcams, or a phone camera. So now, should I have better equipment at this point? Yes, and that's why your support is appreciated, because that's one of the things that I want to do is get a new camera and a new microphone. So, all right. So Mike Reed is asking about only other operational ancients. So there is some stuff. So on the one hand, you have the direct stated inspiration for this game, which is the Conquerors, which is the old SPI game, The Conquerors, and which I have here. Unfortunately, this copy is missing the Greeks. So the entire, half of the game is missing. So I've got to talk to the person that sold it to me about that. They said they thought they were laying around somewhere and they never got back to me. So, John Madison says Mighty Audio off of Amazon for $135 and it's Spotify compatible. Is this an MP3 player? Why have this device? Why have an extra device? You're already carrying the phone around. Now, if you're using it like people were using like the tiny little iPod shuffles where you clip it to your shirt and you go jogging or whatever, I can kind of see that. So, well, if a phone camera is not good enough, you're a better photographer than I am. Let me put it that way. So, does your gym ban phones? I'm wondering. Is it like Planet Fitness where your phone's too loud, you're ejected? Is that how that's working? I'm fairly impressed with the Conquerors, and I'd like to get the rest of the game. It was redone by Excalibur, and that is a Berg design, by the way. It was redone by Excalibur, and then, now it being too big and flopping around too much, that I can actually see. And phone cameras are pretty good. The sound quality on my phone microphone is pretty good. It's honestly just as good as this. I made some software adjustments to this microphone relatively recently, and it sounds better now than it was sounding for a while. But I've been doing this long enough. I should have better equipment than I have. So there's that. We are up to 211 people watching this evening, and I am not sure what is up with that, but 62 of them are watching on Twitter. So thank you, Elon Musk, for whatever it is that you're doing to drive traffic my way. The fantasy there you go. This is not a terrible idea. So 2 other things that have popped in recently. Can you see? Nope, you cannot. So 2 other things that have popped in relatively recently, and I don't think I've showed them off. This is actually not a bad idea at all, Mo. I bet you could make this work. You'd be basically designing a whole new game. But so Battlefleet Mars showed up. Weird game. This is a Redmond Simonson graphics, Greg Kostikian design, and it's weird because of the maps. The maps are like not regular size. They're nor are they regular folded. It's super weird, and I'm not sure what's up with that. But the other thing that I picked up was Sorcerer, and this is a Simonson design actually, which is what made it interesting to me. And it's in really pretty nice condition. There's a bit of mildew inside, but it's in pretty nice condition, and it's unpunched as well, so that's always nice. And this is an interesting. Wow, that's weird. Check out the colors on these counters, man. That is a technique I don't remember seeing anywhere else in any other SPI game. Very interesting. Anyway, So yeah, I'm gonna have to. I've got enough SPI stuff that I'm actually out of room on this shelf, so I'm gonna have to do some shelf rearranging. I got to put another shelf up. So, all right. I should inquire because they'll work with me on this. Is like, hey, if you've got like a parts copy of the Conquerors or something like that, I'll especially for cheap, I could talk to them about that. I find this totally sympathetic, man. If I'm going to the gym, which I haven't done in years, I want to get in and get out, do my stuff and get out. So, I'm not who this is the Kate Middleton. Is this the Kate Middleton thing? Because that's the thing, I guess. I don't understand. Pretty Savage says sound quality can't be beat if you go for lossless music devices. I do not have the audiophile ear that I think would justify this kind of thing. So Neil Benke says Sorcerer was one of his first SPI games. I have never owned it before, and I couldn't turn it down for the price. It was like, might have been 50, I forget. But it's pretty interesting. The map is check out the map on BGG for Sorcerer. It's interesting. Yeah, but unfortunately, I got too much stuff, so I got to put up another shelf. I'll be good with that one more shelf. Oh, and I'm also being really anal about it. So there's like extra shelf on the shelf under the table that I could just be stuffing things into, and I'm not doing those things. So Avalon Hills Alexander is in fact the weird color choices of early Avalon Hill games, although it's not that early. It's early, but it's not that early. As I recall, this is a Gary Gygax design. It's a Battle of Gaugamela, basically. It's the Greeks that I'm missing, not the Romans. But I don't think this is the case. I think it was only sold together, to my knowledge. But I'll be happy to be proven wrong on that. Maybe I just get the Greek half. That would be acceptable. So I'll be good with one more shelf. Yeah, I understand. So I don't know about the premise of the game, but it looked intriguing. Callendale did some video on it, so I'm like, this looks intriguing. I put it on a watch list, and eventually it came up for a price I wanted to pay. There's a very exciting thing coming that I got for an absolutely gangbusters price. Jackson and Corinth, very hard to get for less than about 150, and more typically you see it for just under 200. I got one for about 65 plus shipping, which it's punched, but it's in good shape. So we'll see if it's actually complete when I get it. If it's missing stuff, I'm going to be irritated, but this isn't the first time. Remember that the role of a critic is not to agree with you about what the thing that they're being critical about, right? The role of the critic is to generate insights that you, as an informed consumer, can then use to inform yourself about whether you will like that thing or not. There's plenty of stuff that I have that Callendale says this is trash. Fifth Frontier War, he hated it. And he's right to hate it. As a standalone game, it's not very strong. As an adjunct to the Traveller RPG, it's really very cool. So, oh dear. Obviously, you got to buy another game to prevent this devilry from occurring. So, I suspect that the next thing that's coming in for me is going to be Rebel Fury, but I could be wrong about that. Depends how long it takes GMT to get it shipped to me. So, Callendale is... Now, I'm not making a statement here that says everybody should be watching all of Callendale's videos from beginning to end, okay? Because anybody who's watched Callendale's videos will recognize that that's difficult. Just due to volume, if nothing else. But I think that Callendale is one of a very small number of legitimate critics that are operating in the wargaming space right now. I don't think I'm not a critic. I'm just loudmouth. I don't think that that's why I do very little that is called a review. I've done very few things, not nothing, but very, very seldom will I call something a review, because that kind of implies a more formal analysis than I'm normally providing. Oh God, yeah. So I mean, by all means, skip those, right? So. Now I'm mortified by the mental image here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Fix that when you're getting reprints of France 40. There you go. Well, you know, sometimes parts of the game are really cool and other parts of the game are less cool. I've found the best example I can think of this that's like this for me is actually the Total War video games. Now, back in the day, I played extensively. I played a lot of Total War Medieval and Total War Rome, the first ones. There has been follow-ups to both of those and a pile of other Total War games that I've just not ever been able to get into because I realized that I don't particularly enjoy the tactical game. And that's like 60% of the game. I enjoyed the strategic part of the game, but there are other games that do the strategic part better than the Total War games do. So why not just, and don't bother with the tactical thing. So just play those, right? Yeah, you be curious. You curious away and check that out. No, I'm not. No, we're good. I'm good. Good here. We're good. Thank you. Have a nice day. So, no, thank you. You know, I agree with this. I don't know if I think Callendale's using an actual video camera to do content, and that is a little bit more complicated than doing it with. What I'm doing it with, which is a webcam and a computer. I mean, everything's plugged into the computer here. Oh, this reminds me, I've been meaning to do this for a while. Before they go out of business, I went up to Joann Fabrics and bought a giant piece of green fabric. So I will be experimenting with green screen. Not for this show. In this show, this is the green screen right here. You got what's behind me. But there are other things that I'd like to do where a green screen would be super helpful. You can auto-resolve those battles, but the auto-resolver is not going to be as good at it as you are, which meant that I was hand-resolving all the battles, and it was a pain. So I feel like Away Team is a ways away. You know what I'm saying? I expect Away Team is probably a 2025 release. I'd have to check their actual prospectus on that, but that sounds approximately correct. I feel like Callendale has frequent, valuable insights. Now, he does have like a stream of consciousness format, so you kind of do have to be okay with that to watch a lot of his content. But in that content, there's going to be some interesting insights. And yeah, he gets rules wrong, but the rest of us get rules wrong too. So I'm hearing rumors that Joann Fabrics is going out of business. But my wife's like, "Oh, I need to go to Joann Fabrics," and I'm like, yeah, okay. Oh yeah, okay, let's go to Joann Fabrics. Great idea, great idea. So I bought a huge ass piece of it's almost like 9 feet by 9 feet of green fabric. So it's plenty big enough. I actually have a green screen already. The problem is it's like, it doesn't fit anywhere. It's just not big enough. Anything I would use it for, it has to be like 6 inches behind my head to cover the whole field of view. So something shipped from GMT is probably either Rebel Fury if you ordered that, or it is the other thing that is shipping. What's this? With Rebel Fury, which, as I recall, was... I'm not recalling. I'm looking it up, just to be clear. France 40 was the other thing, and or the mounted map for France 40. And then their next batch of things, they're saying late March or early April. So Clash of Sovereigns update kit for the people, fourth printing. Awesome game. If you don't have it already, get it. Here I Stand, another awesome game, but it's a little less heartily recommended by me just because it's a multiplayer game that doesn't work well, not multiplayer, and it's kind of hard to arrange. So lots of people, I'm one of them, right? I don't know that I was necessarily directly influenced by Callendale, but I mean, when I started looking on YouTube for wargaming stuff and was surprised to find stuff, the people who were around and doing content at the time, Stuka Joe was around at the time, and Callendale was around at the time. Joe Stedman was still doing stuff. Derek Case was still doing stuff at the time. Derek's still around. He's just not really doing content anymore. Joe Stedman is still around as far as I know, and his name pops up from time to time, but I really haven't seen. I'm like friends with Derek on Facebook, so I'm aware that Derek is doing okay. The Joe Stedman don't have any contacts with at all. Rudy received France 40 today. So no, not that kind of green fabric, actually. Again, I joke about being religiously opposed to miniatures, but that's not really the case. That'd be silly. I just don't have the time to deal with it. I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with the extra hobby that, miniatures are, just dealing with the miniatures. I can see, 8 pre-orders. My God, I think I've got 8 pre-orders with MMP. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I'm just hearing like bullshit on Twitter, so don't take any rumors that I might have started with anything other than a mountain of salt. Neil Badke says his wife works at Joann's. They're going into restructuring. Some stores will close, but the brand will not. Viking Sewing portion of Joann. I didn't know they owned that. Is closing within Joann's. I don't know that there's another. I've got online sources where I could buy fabric, but I mean sometimes you want to go in and feel the fabric too. So there's that. Nice. So our current on the table is, or one of the things that is on the table is CSS Saipan. Little Land is a somewhat more mature rulebook. It's going to be a little easier to learn it from that. The rulebook for Saipan is not that good, but it's the first game in a series, as I recall. But it was the one that we agreed was interesting for us. I'm playing one of the 2 Japanese players. Let me put it that way. All right, yeah, Fushigi TV. I remember her too. She was doing great stuff. There was somebody else as well. There's at least half a dozen other channels that were around at the time, and I guess the time is probably 2015. I don't friggin' know at this point. It was a while ago, 2012 maybe, that were doing wargaming content at the time. And, several of them are still around, right? Stuka Joe's still around. Callendale's still around. Joel Toppin was doing stuff at the time too, but I'm not sure if he was doing it on his channel or GMT's channel. I think it was on GMT's channel. I would never choose to play ASL with miniatures. I gotta tell you, I'm aware that they did it, but or they did have some nominal support for it at the time. But I have played. Okay, so this is another one of those things. I feel like I got to qualify this statement. I have played the Firefly board game a couple of times now, and was not incredibly enthused about it. A lot of people really like it. I know at least 2 people who say it is their very favorite game of any kind. I wasn't that crazy about it. And think about it, it's like very much into, it is very much traveler tropes. So I'm not sure where Joe's at. The player's aid, I don't think is at 20K. I think they might have hit 15. Anybody else in our space is also spending that's over 10K is spending a considerable amount of time on non-wargaming type games too, which is nothing wrong with. It's just, it's a different kind of channel, right? Legendary Tactics is like that. They do some wargaming stuff. Marco OmniGamer used to be Marco Wargamer, right? Now every 50th video is a wargaming relevant video from Marco. So I don't watch a lot of his content anymore. I'm still subscribed to Marco. I still like Marco. I'm still interested in when he does a war game. Zilla Blitz is another one, but Zilla's done a lot of non-wargaming content as well. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different kind of channel. So, both Zilla's doing some really quality stuff. Legendary Tactics is a channel I don't like as much, but that's partly just the topic selection that they have too. So, Freezy Albion says he has 30 or 40 issues of the old Wargamers Digest, and there are plenty of World War II minis scenarios he likes to try out with micro armor. And again, if you have the micro armor, cool. I don't have the micro armor, and I'm not going to go get the micro armor or paint the micro armor or even spray paint the micro armor. So that's really my hesitance in dealing with miniatures is I just don't want the extra work. It's just extra work, right? So but yeah, the biggest, more or less pure wargaming channel, and I'm not a pure wargaming channel either. The biggest, more or less pure wargaming channel is the Player's Aid by double or so. And hey, I'm not doing too bad. So we are I did make a decision, by the way, that I wasn't going to make a big deal about hitting subscriber milestones again until I hit 10,000, which will happen at some point, but it won't be all that soon. It could happen by the end of 2025. We will see. They're close enough that I think it doesn't matter. Yeah. They're doing, they do some like general, what I would categorize as historical non-war games too. But they're all at least peripherally connected to war games, or to the wargaming space. So I think Alexander got a complex about the shirts because he doesn't wear the leopard skin shirts anymore. And I think that's disappointing, to be completely honest. I enjoyed Alexander's scintillating fashion sense. So, and I have not seen him wearing anything that ludicrous anytime recently. So I think we gave him a complex about it, which is disappointing because I want everybody to be themselves, right? That is optimal. So yeah, but I mean, I've done a decent amount of Traveler videos, and that's not wargaming either for the most part. So, I mean, there's no wargaming police. Okay, there's not going to be a knock on the door, and they're going to ask for your papers. That's not happening, right? Because why not? Although I think it would be fun to play like Washington's war wearing tricorn hats. So, but then again, maybe I just really need a tricorn hat. I think I could totally engineer that into happening. By the way, I should really make that happen because I know where to get the hat blanks. Let me put it that way. And there's all kinds of fancy hats you could make if you have the correct hat blanks. I'm not sure that it is useful. It is useful in the sense that it is where my interests largely are, but not 100% exclusively. Nobody's really quite doing quite the mix that anybody else is doing, right? Yeah, but see, I'm not. If I was a cowboy, I might agree, but I'm not a cowboy, so I see no reason to wear cowboy hats. everybody's doing kind of their own mix of stuff, right? Marco's doing, the occasional war game and a lot of other, non-war game, board game type things. And that's fine. That's what Marco's interested in doing content about. I'm doing every once in a while, do an RPG thing. And every once in a while might mean once a week, but that never seems to last for more than 3 weeks in a row. And then, all my other content is basically war game oriented. With rare exceptions, like the one movie review that I did. So, we unless we're one of those people, like one of those people who is making a living off of this, everybody is doing the content that they want to do because they want to do it. And that applies to certainly everybody that's been listed in the chat here and everybody that's ever done a wargaming video. They're not doing it because they're making money. They're doing it because it's content they want to do because they have something to say or they have something that they want to show, right? So I'm going to do, I guess I'll mention this. What's our time? Oh, shit. We're close to 10 o'clock here, folks. So the first session, we had a slight delay due to me getting sick, but we have scheduled the first RuneQuest session for this coming Friday. That game is full, by the way. We have a full suite of players. And we have, after that, I think we're still planning on doing Call of Cthulhu, which is also full. By the way, if anybody wants to see the rules and scenario book for The Fate of All, it is on their website, by the way. I forget what I was trying to say. Anyway, so tomorrow we'll have the show with Dan, and that's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to have the folks from Ace of Aces. There's a new Ace of Aces Kickstarter, which it's only live for another day or so. So get on that if you're interested in a new edition of Ace of Aces. So we're going to have a couple people on for that tomorrow. We got shorts all week. That's going to be a kind of a thing that I want to get done. Although this week's shorts didn't do as well as last week's shorts. I don't know why. It's YouTube mystery. But then Wednesday, we're going to have the video with Mark Hinkle on Winter's Victory. And on Thursday, we have the unboxing of The Fate of All. And then hopefully next week, we will get the video interview that we got with the OCS team from Winterfest. So I may, now that I'm thinking about it, I may need to have an addendum on that. So let me remind everybody to like the video if you have not already done so. Thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. And there's a whole bunch of ways you can support the channel listed in the video description, from the Patreon to the Ko-Fi to all that other stuff. And that's going to help me tremendously to help upgrade equipment. I'd like to have a new mic. The new microphone is like the big piece of hardware that I'd really like to get done this year. I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not, but we'll see. It's fairly expensive. The new microphone is going to be fairly expensive, so it's going to be more expensive than this. And this was about $125, I want to say. You can very occasionally get a Yeti microphone on sale, the blue Yeti, the big one, for less than $100, but not much less than $100. And I've bought 3 of them at this point. My travel microphone is a Yeti Mini or Yeti Nano or whatever it is. So in any event, the support is much appreciated, and I'd like to give a shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, and there'll be a title card up in the next minute or so. But in the meantime, tune in to the show tomorrow. I guess it's like 1 minute to go here, and I'm feeling guilty about not giving you that extra 1 minute, but I think I've run out of things to say at the same time. And I thought we did okay as far as dealing with the topic tonight. Probably better off than last week. So, folks, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We'll be back next week with a new show and a new night. Not a new night. It'll be Monday night, but you know what I'm saying. We'll be back next week with another show, and tune in tomorrow for me and Dan and the Ace of Aces folks, and we'll see everybody next time.